Hello and welcome to the Outdoorsy Educator podcast, the show where curiosity meets the open road. I'm your host Alistair, and I invite you to join me as we explore the world through travel, nature, getting outside, and the power of learning. Each episode, we will dive into stories from inspiring educators, adventurers, and global citizens who are reshaping what it means to learn, whether it's in a classroom, on a mountain trail, or even halfway across the world. From backpacking trips that change your perspective to educational journeys that transform communities, we will cover it all. So pack your curiosity, lace up your boots, and let's discover how the world teaches us, one step, one story, one adventure at a time. Jeanette J.J. Jolley is a seasoned television producer, creative director, and outdoor adventure junkie who has filmed in over 80 countries, dodged downpours on glacier landings, and even funded a pig roast in a Belizean village, all in the name of chasing great stories. Her career took flight on the Paramount lot in the early 2000s, but her true calling came behind the camera, capturing raw, real, and riveting moments in the wild. As a producer for ABC's Ocean Treks with Jeff Corwin, JJ helped bring wildlife conservation and culture to screens around the world, earning multiple Daytime Emmy nominations in the process. JJ, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited and honored.
Of course, I read through your bio online, and we've, of course, chatted back and forth over the last week or two, and I'm so excited to hear about you and hear about you as the real traveler, hear about where you came from, where you've been, and all of these exciting stories. So why don't you start off by just telling us a little bit about where you're from, your childhood, growing up, that sort of thing?
Well, I have a fun, crazy story. We don't need to get totally into this side, but I'm adopted. I was adopted as a young baby. I was born in Santa Monica and adopted to a family in Southern California. And I scored the gold mine of what I say of families because I came from a very large family that are all about the outdoors, that had a cabin outside Yosemite. And
wow.
So summers were there, and all other seasons we were at the beach in Southern California. So I don't think I wore a pair of shoes till I was maybe 10 years old because I just ran barefoot everywhere from the mountains to the beach all the time.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to California for the first time in February. We were in Los Angeles for a work thing, and ended up driving down to meet a friend who lives in Riverside.
Okay.
And he's huge into camping. He's camping about 3 weekends a month, things like that. And it was just hearing his stories, it makes me want to go out there and really explore. He's up in Yosemite and things a lot.
It's heavenly.
Yeah. And I knew it was there, but of course, starting just getting a glimpse of it, it does truly whet the appetite for, all right, I need to get out to California more.
You know, California, a lot of people bash on it a little bit, just I think of the reputation. But where I grew up in Southern California, you had beach camping, then you had the bonfires that we did as children. And then, 2-hour drive, you're up at Big Bear, which is another amazing outdoor place to go resource. It's starting to get a little overpopulated, but then 6 hours you're up in Yosemite, and then another 6 hours up the coastline we were camping on the sand dunes. So literally it's got so much outdoor resources to play with. I'm so glad I grew up there. It was super fun.
Yeah, when I had dinner with Roland and his wife when I was out there, and something that it seemed to be a bit of a trend was people were leaving California for a cheaper place to live, essentially. And then they wanted to come back, but had got themselves in a situation and an infrastructure and a mortgage and a this and a that they really couldn't come back. And they wish that they could, because it's the old thing, right? You don't know what you've got till it's gone. And they didn't realize quite how much they would miss it, and perhaps their priorities had shifted too. So they were saying that they've got no intention of leaving because they're well aware of how beautiful it is.
It is. And the weather is fantastic. And I left in 2010 to move to Nashville, Tennessee. And I kind of, I don't ever say regrets, it's just a different life lesson. But but I do regret it because the weather is so good. And then once you leave, it's hard to come back because it is so much more
Right.
expensive. But yeah, so I try and get back as much as I can to still see family that are there or take a trip, to keep that outdoor side. Cause I mean, the pines and the sequoia smells are just unbelievable. Like that pine smell, I've never smelled anywhere, not even Washington or Oregon. It's a different kind of smell that reminds me of my childhood that you can't find anywhere else I have found in the United States.
Yeah, nowhere can replicate that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with me. I'm from Scotland, and when I go back home, not so much pine trees and things, but yeah, there's smells. It's really the smell more than almost anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't replicate those things.
Yeah.
You can try as you might, but home will always be home.
That is true.
And there's something very, very special about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you grew up in California. You said you had a big family. Is that correct?
So I have a massively huge, awesome, big family. And what is cool is my grandfather, who is pretty much a Los Angeles native, bought some land at a lake called Bass Lake, California, which is about an hour outside of Yosemite. And he built a cabin in the 70s with the intention of knowing he wanted all his grandchildren to be here and have a summer place to have. So him and my uncles and friends hand built this gorgeous cabin on Bass Lake, California. And it had its own private beach with a dock. So when I say I was adopted to the best family ever, I really can't ever complain because I mean, it was just the best ultimate summers. And growing up, they had some requirements. No television. Obviously, there were no cell phones back in the 70s, 80s, and really, and we really didn't even have a radio. I would bring my little Fisher Price player and a couple of my little boom boxes when I got older. But Grandma and Grandpa did not want us having outside noise, not for a bad reason or rules. They really wanted all of us kids just to be active and outdoors and engage with each other. And so our aunts and uncles, we all grew up pretty close. So either our parents would come up and drop us off, and then they would all go home and Grandma and Grandpa would watch us, or they would we'd all carpool up. One aunt or uncle would load us up, as many that wanted to go for a few weeks up at the cabin, and we'd go up there. I mean, we were laid out between bedrooms and sleeping on the floor, and it didn't matter. It was the best summers of my lifetime because you'd wake up at the sunrise, you'd hear the boats out on the lake. And it's either you get up early enough to catch Grandpa on the first boat run to go skiing on the glass, or you'd have to wait till lunchtime to get round two with him. But I mean, Grandpa taught us how to fish. He built us this massive rope swing over the water, and then also over outside the cabin land. And that was my summers, was barefoot in the woods, hiking down to the beach, and either fishing or being with Grandma and learning how to cook and over the fires for everybody. And it was literally, I can't even tell you how special it was to have that in our family and have that relationship. And I think because of it, my cousins and I, we're all extra close to this day in our adult life because of it. And times have changed, so we try and implement things. I don't have children, but they all do. But they've implemented the outdoors a little bit, but not quite as rough as we used to have it. But I'm so glad. And I'm glad I never really watched television growing up. Just immerse myself in nature and stuff.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how these wonderful experiences have passed themselves on generationally. And I suppose, as you said, that if your cousins have had children, they're sort of trying to, I don't know if replicate is the right word, but certainly honor the way that your grandpa raised you guys. And perhaps in your career, you're doing a little bit of that too.
I did. And so it's funny, as I say, I didn't watch television growing up.
Right.
But I always had a fascination with the arts, and being from Los Angeles, I was around it a lot and immersed around it and stuff. It's interesting. I ended up going into that career because it wasn't kind of my path. But when I did, and I started in television, I was working on various TV lots and award shows. I knew early on I wanted to be a TV producer. And then when I got the travel bug, even more so, I was like, how do I merge these two? How do I get to see more of the world and still make television? And it took me a while. I'll get to it, but it was so fun just trying to figure out those things. And then it was like, how do I get to nature stuff? How do I get to speak other languages? It wasn't easy. It was a lot of work to get there.
Of course.
But, so I don't want people to think that, oh, it just happened overnight. I got this job and I started traveling the world. No, it took many years and a lot of hard work to learn how to be a travel producer. But it was the best thing. And I think I think having an outdoor background and roughing it a lot as a kid, learning how to go to the bathroom in the woods around a bunch of boys and things like that.
Right.
It helped toughen me up for what road life is like, doing adventure travel outdoor shows, because it's fun and it's glamorous and you get to see so many things, but it is no sleep. You're up before the sunrise to be ready for that sunrise shot. And then you got to stay till the sun sets, which means very long days, 18, 20-hour days to do a film shoot. And that helped prepare me for what would end up being my career out in the outdoors.
I find that so interesting because I imagine most people who want to get into travel television want to be the person in front of the camera. They want to be the host. They want to be the one doing the interviews. But you opted to be more behind the scenes. What do you think that motivation was to be a producer rather than what I feel most people who want to be in that industry want to do?
I have never had a desire to be in front of the camera. I have so much respect for everybody that does, because it is a lot of work to be on. And then when you're hosting, if as much as a producer can prep and prepare, sometimes the interview doesn't go as engaging. And so it's a lot of responsibility on the host to keep it going and keep the segments going as much as they can. I just never had a desire for that. I love the complexity of putting that puzzle together and all the pieces as much as you can and preparing it. And I like the advance work it takes to do that.
Right.
And then you prep your host, you give them your notes so they're ready and educated as best as they can to do the segment. And then you cross your fingers that it all works, and you gotta fix it in post, fix it in editing.
Right, fix it afterwards.
But when I got into my career, and I honestly was about a year or two in, and I was watching different producers and how they do it, from scripted to live shows to I was working for some HGTV shows too. Of all the shows that I had done on this glamorous job and working with big celebrities, I loved the HGTV stuff. I loved the being outdoors. I loved the building of things and how, like, if it doesn't go right, how do you figure out your backup plan and be ready for plan A, B, and C? And I've still been that way in my professional life and personal life. Always have 3 plans ready to go. And that I loved. And so from there, when I started doing HGTV shows, then I started doing some reality shows. And then from there, it led to some bigger home makeover shows that did very well. And then when that happened, that catapulted my career, and I started traveling 300 days a year. And I got the bug, and that was like at 24, 25. And I've never looked back since, because one thing I love about being a producer is you get to go in early. So sometimes on a good show, if there's enough time, you get to go in early, like a month early, but average is about 1 to 2 weeks. And so you get to really meet the town and the culture of the town, whether anywhere in the United States to anywhere in the world. And you're not rushed when the film crew comes in.
I see. Right.
Yeah. Once the film crew comes in, that's when the clock starts of money, more so. And so you want to, as a producer, make sure you've prepped and got everything ready, because time is money. And you've got to have all your ducks in a row. So when you're preparing and I'm out in a country, I can have a lunch or a coffee with whoever the subject is that the host is going to interview, and take my time and really build trust in a relationship. So when the film crew comes in, they already know they're going to be taken care of, and it's not going to be exploited for television. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. I find that really, really interesting. All these things that we don't see, all the prep work, all the behind the scenes. While you were talking, it reminded me of, I don't know if you've ever seen a lot of the BBC sort of wildlife documentaries, with David Attenborough famously does a lot of the narration. And I find those shows fascinating, but equally as interesting to me is often at the end of a series, say The Life of Plants, they'll show you how it was made. And these guys who are up in a tree in a hammock for 3 weeks just trying to get that shot. And there is part of me that finds that just absolutely fascinating. All the work you don't see for 7 seconds, or trying to catch something that people know exists but haven't seen.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of the true unsung heroes, I feel, almost of this industry. I find it so really, really fascinating to me.
They really are. And you know what? I love that of all the crews I've met around the world and those that I still haven't met that I have so much respect for, is it's not just getting up the tree, but a lot of times we have to take 200 pounds of gear on our back up many, many miles of where a lot of times we work with research scientists that know where these locations are. And so they'll guide us up there. We're hiking it up. Sometimes you can get mules and Sherpas to help you, but a lot of times we're all taking all of the gear and hiking it up miles and miles. Then we got to rope it up the tree, so it takes a lot of physical, mental strength and patience to just even get ready for the shot that I've had to learn over the years. Nothing's instant. Drones were one of the greatest things ever because that helped cut some of the work we have to do.
I can imagine. Yeah.
But a lot of places in the world sometimes don't let you fly the drones. And so you still have to find different ways and creative ways you're going to get that shot.
Well, you kind of touched on this, and I find it interesting when all this behind the scenes work, physical and mental. Like, how do you keep yourself going? Like, I know you're quite an advocate for sort of clean living and deep health. How do you keep yourself, physically and mentally where you need to be? Because I assume you have to be sharp and on for very long periods of the day, every day that you're out there working.
You're sweet. Thank you. I have not always been the healthiest, but I've had to navigate it through life. I used to be, when early in my career, I would be drinking 12 Diet Cokes a day, which is probably the worst thing for you
right
out there, and energy drinks. And sometimes you need that every now and then, a pickup. But being an outdoor adventure producer, both men and women, really clean eating and electrolytes and healthy electrolytes are so essential because you are out there for long hours. Like I said, you're up at dark before the sun rises to get that shot for the sunrise, and you're staying out there for 18 hours until the sun sets. Overtime, so to say, is not a thing. You just do it. So you have to stay physically fit when you're out there on the road training and at the gym, even if it's little things. But when I'm not on the road, I am training 6 days a week in the gym and very clean eating, because if you're not sharp here, and no brain fog, you can't, then sometimes you miss the animal. You've got to be aware, and all your senses have to be on when you're out there in the wild. And if you're tired, fatigued, not feeling good, because sometimes you're not eating the best stuff, your body's got to be ready to handle whatever country you're in. And that's important. And that's one thing that I really push and stress for people who want to get into the travel adventure space, whether it's like working on Amazing Race or Survivor or doing a travel show like I do with like let's say Planet Earth or a BBC show, other BBC shows. You've got to be physically ready, because usually you only get a week's notice of the call of where you're going to go in the world. And if you're not physically and mentally ready, then you're not going to be the best out there. And there have been times I have been out there where I was not both physically and emotionally ready. And I feel like I didn't give my best work, while you're out there, because you're thinking about home stress, or I need to go to a doctor, or this, and so now I travel with a whole suitcase of my own vitamins and essentials and all the food that the country will let me bring in. and protein bars and stuff, certain type of protein bars, because I don't want to take a risk out on the road of not being my mentally best and physically best that I can be.
Right. That's so interesting. I'm sure it's taken you probably years of trying different things and packing this and packing that and figuring out what works for you when you're on the road.
Yeah. There's a running joke in my family that
Yeah.
I take the whole kitchen, including the kitchen sink, when I travel, because
Nice,
I
right?
have the blender, I have the blender balls, I have, 20 million packs of proteins and stuff, that my family laughs that suitcase is heavier than my own clothes because I just bring so much out on the road.
But it works, right? You're doing what works
It
for
works.
you.
It works. 26 years later, I'm still here, so it
I
works.
love that. Well, I mean, yeah, it seems that you've traveled to over 80 countries. What one was the most difficult to get the things that you want to bring with you into? Where did you run into the biggest problems?
You're going to laugh. So when I travel, I always try and look up what the requirements are, make sure we're not bringing anything in we're not supposed to. A lot of times seeds, you're not allowed to bring seeds into a country, so you want to make sure that's not hiding anywhere in your bags that you forgot about or something like that. I was thinking about this morning when I was trying to think of stories with you. And we were traveling to Australia. This was when I was working with Jeff Corwin. And so Jeff Corwin, amazing, amazing, talented host. And there's certain things he likes on the road from America. And so we have a whole entire suitcase that weighs about 100 pounds of all of his snacks. And that was my job, to travel with the snacks, to get it in early before he got there. And we get to Australia, and it's nothing, but his nuts, and I forgot again, seeds and beef jerky. Like, we're talking like almost $1,000 worth of beef jerky I had in this bag that the crew and him love to eat. And I get stopped at customs. And it wasn't even just a stop. It was, we're going back and we're interviewing you. Are you selling this? What are your intentions? And also, all of this is not allowed in the country. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to lose my job if I don't have the snacks for the crew and Jeff. Like, what am I going to do? How am I going to talk my way out of this? I'm trying to convince them. I'm like, it's for a film crew, and we're not here selling it. I'm trying every stop I can in my
of course,
to this gets through. And if my memory serves me right, they would not let us bring in our seeds or beef jerky. They confiscated it all. And I was just besides myself. I thought, oh my heavens, I can't believe I made this mistake. I didn't think that beef jerky would be a thing that I couldn't bring into the country. The seed, like nuts and seeds, I was like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. I should have put two and two together. But they confiscated like thousands of dollars of food from us.
Right. Thankfully, they, I assume, let you go. And
luckily I got out and they let me go. But I was really surprised because I'm like, well, it's a very modern country. Like, they should have let us in. It's not like we were in the remote woods of Africa or something like that. But they're just trying to protect their country and do what's right. And,
so it's not the first time I've heard that about Australia. And I think being an island nation, it's just different because they can control what comes in and out easier, I suppose, than, say, the United States, where it's land border, sea border, all of that stuff. You can keep things out that you want to keep out in an easier way, I suppose, when there's not a big land border with a country that allows whatever it might be.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I just remember being so afraid I was either going to get this massive fine and have to call my boss, or I was going to lose my job because now the crew and the host don't have what they need, their favorites. But it all worked out. We found some substitutes.
So I'd love to hear about that transition from shows like Extreme Home Makeover that you produced to the travel adventure space with people like Jeff Corwin, who's a well-known travel host here in the States. How did that transition happen, and was it everything you hoped it would be?
Thank you for asking that, because I just got chills thinking about my time with Jeff Corwin, because it was some of the best years of my life that I learned so much. When I was on Extreme Home Makeover, that's when I really got the travel bug, because in the time that I was on Extreme Home Makeover, I think I worked in like 30 states at that time. And so that preparation of going into a city and how to pull permits and work with your local police and where you can drone, can't drone, just in the United States, really helped me think globally and how I could take this. And so from my experience of working on Extreme Home Makeover, I started doing a lot of hotel commercials. So I was down in Mexico doing some Marriott commercials, Hilton commercials. I was up in Canada, also doing some, I think it was Hilton at the time commercials. So that's where I really got my feet wet of preparing internationally and how to work internationally. And there's some things when you work internationally, depending on the country, of how much local crew you have to hire, and then bringing in your United States crew. Mm-hmm. And then that's also where you learn how to pull a carnet, and which is all your gear list. So you can't go into a country without submitting this massive form to our U.S. government that then prepares it for the foreign government to make sure you're not going to bring in all this expensive equipment and sell it. So what you bring in, you're going to bring out.
Again, things that we just don't know about when we're sitting on the couch watching a TV show. This is fascinating.
Months and months of planning it goes into before you can go into a country. Again, so you're not going to illegally sell anything. You can't just come in as a United States country film crew and just go film. Legally, you're not supposed to do that. It happens, but legally, you're not supposed to. You're supposed to work with a local, and it's the money exchanges and stuff that has to happen in that regards. And so that's where you work with a local producer, which in the film business we call a fixer. Your fixers are your best friends as a eventual producer. Not only do they know that country really, really well and their resources and stuff, but navigating all of the permits. And it's actually, I find, harder to film in foreign countries and more permits required than in the United States. So you really have to work with that person to make sure you have everything legally ready and legally prepared, and insurance. Say you crash your drone in Santorini and start this massive fire there, you have to have a certain type of insurance that local producer also helps navigate you through. So the days of like filming with your phone, easy peasy, but what you watch on Netflix and National Geographic, there is a massive legal paperwork process we as producers have to follow in order for that to be on the television screen. And that was one thing that I was never prepared for as a producer that I wish I had learned earlier on. But the amount of paperwork and permits I do and plan for before a film shoot actually happens is pretty massive, to make sure we're not kicked out of a place, or start a fire and the drone crashes. Like, we want to make sure all our ducks are in a row. And it's always when you've gone and done everything, you never usually have a problem. But let's say you kind of forgot something, or we decided to go off rogue a little bit and go somewhere else. And you're like, okay, do I call the film permit office? Let them know. Do I not? Should we do this? And usually I do call them to make sure we're A-okay and maybe don't need to pull a permit. But sometimes when you don't, the next thing you know, you're stopped by the cops and this.
Of course.
Like, I knew I should pull that permit.
Right. You just wish you had done it. And I suppose the permitting must look so different. Extreme Home Makeover sort of, I assume that all of that was filmed in the United States. That must seem so simple. I'm trying to think somewhere Jeff Corwin went, and of course it's escaped off the top of my head. But let's say going to Australia to go to the Great Barrier Reef, something like that. It must be many times the paperwork and the headache and the hassle transitioning over into that adventure travel world as a producer.
You kind of use the word headache or hassle. Is it a hassle? Kind of, but it's our job.
I suppose, yes.
And these countries do it for a really good reason. They want to make sure environmentally we're not going to damage anything that's out there as a film crew, that we're not going to be touching certain things we shouldn't be touching, that's going to mess up this ecosystem that that country has worked so hard to protect. So a lot of places we go in film, like with Jeff, we have to have a research scientist with us that's part of that ecosystem of wherever we're at, or a guide to, one, either be on camera if it works out. If not, then just there to help us and make sure we're in the right places that we should be. So I wouldn't use the word hassle or headache. I would say more so I respect it. Does it make my job a little bit more difficult? Yeah. But I respect what they bring to the table, because we don't want to go in as a film crew, especially with Jeff. I mean, Jeff is so environmentally conscientious that I want to make sure, and the team wants to make sure, we're doing everything proper and respectful in that country. Because not only are we representing that country, but also we're working together and representing what Jeff's knowledge and degree is in, and making sure he's set up for success.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a mind shift, change. Yeah. It's thinking about camping and hiking, just leave no trace. You could view that as a bit of a hassle, but of course, honestly, we're just preserving the land, taking care of the land for the land's sake and for the next generation. No, so of course, you're absolutely right. I'm sure there's some frustrations, but bigger picture, this is very, very important that we're doing that and preserving wherever it is you may go in the world.
Yeah.
So you can inspire people by making the shows and make sure it's ready for them when they come to visit by having taken care of it ethically. So I really appreciate that explanation. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
And so you've alluded to the fact that Jeff was a pretty awesome guy. What was he like behind the scenes? What is he like, behind the scenes, off the camera? Was he as wonderful as he appears to be when we see him on our television sets?
Oh my gosh. I had the best years with Jeff and the crew. And Jeff is, again, one of the most knowledgeable people I've ever worked with in my career, especially in conservation. And so when we would prepare for segments and discuss different ideas between him and our co-executive producer, who's been with him for many, many years, we would just laugh. Oh my gosh, he's so much fun. Big practical joker. So you got to be watching yourself. And I think when I first started with him, I never alluded I did not like snakes, because I heard he'll play a joke on you, maybe put a snake in your hotel room, or have a snake somewhere hiding at the gear. So for the first while, I avoided snake stories. I will go swim with sharks, tarantulas, jump a cliff, no problem. But you put me around a snake and I will lose my mind. I don't like it. And Jeff, being, biologist, loves snakes and loves to do snake stories. So the first season I worked with him, I got lucky. I avoided snake stories, and they would ask me, "Oh, well, in that country, or is there this or that?" And these kinds of. I was like, "Nope, no snakes, no snakes. No, we don't want to do a snake story." I'm like, "This other story is so much more fun and exciting." And then it was my second season with him. I think my first snake story, was in Dominica. We were doing some boa constrictor stories they wanted to do over there, working with some different scientists. It was the hardest day of my life. Oh my goodness. and at that point he knew I did not like snakes. Luckily, this is where he's such a good soul. He never played a practical joke.
Good for him. Excellent.
But my friend, oh man, when we had to do that snake story, and it was so big of a snake, and I just was like, how far of a distance can I keep while filming and doing my job and not be around it? And he was a good soul about it. But Jeff is so much fun. He has been, I think, to almost every country in the world and filmed in every country in the world. I mean, he's been on TV for so many years. And so he knows so much about every ecosystem around the world. And it just, again, I just soaked it up with him, and when segments didn't go as planned, just a good soul of being able to work together on our feet to pivot. And that does happen out there with weather. But I think I've laughed more and learned more about food, and my food palate grew with him because he has such a cultural palate. And so trying new things and experiencing new foods around the world as we went to these different countries was a blast to share that with him.
Yeah, he always strikes me as one of these people a bit in a similar vein to, say, Samantha Brown, the late great Steve Irwin, even the late Anthony Bourdain, people who would be doing this stuff even if the cameras weren't there. And you can kind of feel it. You feel that energy and that passion, that he's not making a TV show for television's sake. It's to communicate the passion and the importance of what he's talking about. And television is just the medium by which he's doing it. He's always struck me as somebody who's not looking to be a star.
You 100% nailed it. Jeff Corwin is who you see on TV, is who you see at home. and who you see in the office. And the authenticity of him just is unbelievable. And what I admire, even after all these years, is he still is working to help the next generations and teach the next generations. Our show at the time was on ABC Saturday mornings. And his new show now, which I'm not a part of because I've gone on to do some different things, but is on CBS Saturday mornings. So I love that he's still out there, the same human that he was when he first started, and helping educate and teach this next generation that's coming up about conservation and animals.
Yeah, I love it. I'm actually interviewing somebody tomorrow who has been inspired by him and does marine conservation. So I just love that he probably, of course, has no idea how many lives he has touched. Um, his reach will know no bounds. So it's such a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I'm very, very honored to have spent the years I did with him and the crew. And a lot of the crew are still with him today. His executive producer that has been with him, Sarah's amazing, for I don't know how many years at this point, at least 10 or more years. She's still with him to producing TV. And I just think that is one of the most admirable things. And that says a lot about who Jeff is, that his team has stayed with him for all these years. I had some personal things kind of change in my life, which is why I didn't stay on the show, but I would love to go back in a heartbeat. It would be fun.
I love that. Yeah, it speaks volumes about who he is as a person. So I'm very thankful for you that you had that experience with him. But then you transitioned away from TV and producing and became the creative director of an outdoor brand. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about that transition and what that meant for you.
Well, when I got the call to jump on and go the corporate route, it was a lot of consideration for me. For me to go corporate, I've been freelance adventure producer now at that point for about 20 plus years. And so there's a freedom you like when you're an outdoor producer that you don't, I don't know about you, but sometimes you don't like authority or having to be a 9 to 5 in an office. And so
Right.
I like being able to wear my North Face every day to work. So I thought, oh man, do I really want to do this? Does this make sense? But I'll never say never. Had it been a different brand that might have been not in the vein, I don't know if I would have chosen it. But because it was an outdoor brand and I lived the lifestyle, I camp. It wasn't like I turned 18 and I stopped camping. I, to this day, do van life, and I'm camping every summer day that I can up until it's snowing. So it seemed like it was a fit. And I didn't have to be in the corporate office very often, so that worked out very well for me.
Good.
And so I said, you know what? I was honored they asked me to do it. And I said, if there's any other person that could do it and know this lifestyle and work to, at the end of the day, help sell this lifestyle to other people so they will want to be part of it, let me take on the challenge. Let me do it. I
love that.
Yeah.
Right.
So I did. I walked away from TV and everybody thought I was crazy. I have had at this point, multiple awards and television and they said, what are you thinking? Like, you're kind of at the peak of your career. Like, are you sure this is what you wanted to do? And that goes back to when you're an adventure producer, you love a good challenge. So we don't like any day ever the same. And so I said, let's do it. Let's do it. I said, this sounds like every day will be a little different and let's give it a try. And I'm so glad I did it. It was probably one of the hardest jobs I've ever done compared to anything in Hollywood. Not only because you're learning all of the corporate side of marketing and running a very large outdoor brand, but at the other side of it too, we had RVs we were dealing with and getting supplies. And when you go do these commercial shoots and video shoots, sometimes you want the most picturesque location is not the easiest to get an RV. Right. And models and talent and then extra RVs for the talent because there's no cabins. So they're comfortable to do these shoots. So it challenged me in other creative ways of wanting to portray. And that was my end goal, was I want the audience, I want the buyers to feel the passion that I have for the outdoors and inspire them to get outside more. It's not just buying a product. I want them to love this lifestyle as much as I do. I want to make sure I am like, whether we're, in a small RV to, some 40-footer RVs, that I am showing them everything I love about this and just want to live outside every day like I do. So it was a big thing to me that I'm not just a corporate stuffy person trying to sell an outdoor clothing or outdoor lifestyle. No, I live this lifestyle. I
I
live
love
this
it.
lifestyle, and come live it with me. And so it was a 2-year contract I did that was just immensely so much fun. Every 2 weeks we were shooting a new commercial somewhere in the United States, but it was the hardest job I ever did. So
How
when
do
it
you think
ended,
you
I was
changed?
happy.
That's wonderful. Now, how do you think you changed as a person from when you went into this 2-year contract to when you came out? What was the biggest change you felt?
For me, I learned through that job and working in the outdoor lifestyle. There's the corporate side, which is not as exciting, but when you're in the outdoor brand world, or if you want to be, I don't like to use the word influencer, but I want to say just educator on social media.
Right.
The back end of marketing and how to speak to your audience, I was so grateful that I learned that I didn't know before. And I walked away with, I felt like, the best master's program in brand marketing that anybody could have ever asked for, which is great. The other side I learned is, because social media and websites need to change so fast, so often, there is hundreds, thousands of hours of content you need to get for a brand that is constantly evolving, constantly changing the sales, changing the marketing. And so like I was saying, I was shooting a new commercial every 2 weeks. We were just constantly planning. I think I was working about 100 hours a week at the time,
Goodness.
for 2 years. And so what I learned from that is have a great team and a great resources as your support group. You're only as good as who you put with you. And so sometimes that was challenging at times. And then other times you're with fantastic production companies and producers and filmmakers that just make your job so much easier and so much better. And you don't have to stress and worry about that shoot. So walking away from it, in doing it again, I would definitely be a little bit more strategic in how I handle those film shoots around the world. So that way the burnout with the whole entire team doesn't happen. Because the burnout is real. And during that time, I really didn't hike. During those 2 years, I was working so much in the outdoors. I lost my passion for the outdoors. I very rarely hiked. I don't think I camped once during those 2 years. Actually, I did not camp for 2 years, which is not me. My soul needs to get revived, hearing the sounds and nature. And so it goes back to, they say, never meet your biggest idols and don't ever meet your biggest celebrities, because sometimes you'll be disappointed. I don't want to say that job was that way for me totally, because I walked away with so much masters of knowledge of it. But sometimes when your work is so much that it used to be your passion, you lose a little bit of your passion. So when the job ended, the first thing I did that same day was I just said, I left my phone at home and I just went up to the biggest mountain waterfall I could hike and just revived my soul of it, because I had forgotten a little bit of why I love the outdoors, why I am an adventure producer, why I am a brand outdoor producer. Because I think if you lose that core value a little bit of it, and it's more of a job and less of a career, then you need to dial it down and come back. So
Absolutely. This is something we deal with in education all the time. Teachers get, understandably, of course, so overwhelmed with testing and regulations and paperwork and this and that. It's so easy to lose track of your why. And part of the job I'm transitioning into now is trying to ensure that good quality educators who are passionate about what we do never lose track of their why. And if they do, how can we circle back around? to making sure that the why is front and center of everything we do. That sounds like a very similar journey that you went on.
Very much so. And going back to like my earlier years in television and adventure shows and working with Jeff Corwin, that helped me prepare. Every step I've had, I never realized it would help me prepare for the next outdoor adventure plan. And also, I will say to those that want to come up and do adventure producing, like say they want to go work, for National Geographic or the BBC and things like that, don't try and take the leap of like production assistant to director. Take the steps. I think had I tried to go like that, I would not have been prepared to be the creative director of an outdoor brand, because each step from like production assistant to camera assistant to the biggest thing, like I say, is logistics when you're an adventure travel producer. That helped me go, okay, I know on this mountaintop, I need to get an RV. I need to get 5 RVs. And, oh, by the way, there's a military base with fighter jets. I need to fly a drone. How do I get this permission over a national forest with fighter jets to fly this drone at this window? And every step helped me think through those logistics versus just showing up at the camera and filming. The worst thing you could ever do is think you're filming a commercial and you don't need any permits. And next thing you know, fighter jet's there and it's crashed. You've crashed it into the engine of the drone, of
Right.
the plane. You don't ever want to have that happen. So I'm so glad I didn't rush things, and it took me a while. And the other thing I say as an adventure producer of just being present in the moment, but the money's good. We'll just say that. It's not going to be overnight good, but if you work hard, the money's good and you can have a really good, long-lasting career instead of rushing things.
I love that. Yeah, anything that's worthwhile is worth taking all the steps towards it.
Yeah,
I absolutely love it. Yeah, I've got a couple of questions I'd love to ask you that, if you reflect on your career as a whole, now that if you've left that corporate gig and you've fallen in love with hiking again, if you could hike 10 miles with anybody in the world, dead or alive, who would you like to go hiking with?
Oh, I was not prepared for this question, my friend.
Yes, I'm throwing this at you.
You threw it at me. Oh, my goodness. Let me think on this.
Yeah,
anybody, dead or alive, go hiking. This will sound a little crazy, but it would be my grandfather. My grandfather Doyle.
It doesn't sound crazy. His name was Doyle?
Doyle was his name.
What a great name that is.
Right? Is that not an old-fashioned name or what?
Yeah.
My grandfather Doyle served in World War II, and I've had an opportunity to record a lot of his stories before he passed. But he was an outdoor adventurist through and through, and almost, I think it was 2 weeks up to his passing, would still walk or hike 5 miles a day. And I would just love to know more of his stories and his whys of life and conservation that he had. And be just him and I, no other people around.
Yeah, just the two
of
you.
No other aunts or uncles, and just get his more of his life story. I think would be really, really fascinating to know.
He sounds like such an interesting man.
He was the coolest, most adventurous, fearless soul. I mean, he was water skiing until he was, I think, 90.
Goodness.
I mean, that's how I want my body to be.
Absolutely. Yes.
When I get that old. But yeah, Grandpa Doyle was the true outdoorsman, true nature. I mean, the man built his huge cabin with his own hands. Like, to me, that's just admirable, just because he wanted to keep his family together and be outdoors.
It sounds like a true inspiration. What a fantastic guy.
He's the best.
Another question for you. If you could only listen to one piece of music or one audiobook for the next month, what would it be?
Oh,
yes.
So my music taste rotates every month, and it rotates by the country I go to. So if I'm getting ready to go to a country, I start listening to their pop music before I go, so I know a little bit more of their culture. So currently I am getting ready to traveled to the Caribbean. So I am listening to a lot of Caribbean reggae, and I love Caribbean reggae. But to answer your question, if I had to listen to one piece of music the rest of my life, I love Latin jazz. I'm Puerto Rican by birth, and there's something in my blood that I could sit and listen to Latin jazz for hours and hours and hours, and just drink some good wine and just feel like I'm in the culture of that country.
I love that. It just speaks to your soul, and that's what good music does. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yes, I never get old. I never get tired of listening to Johnny Swim. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're a band out of California, husband and wife team, and they have a little Latin country flair they do with their music. That is, I love. I always am constantly listening to Johnny Swim.
I
But
know the name, but I don't know their music. I'll need to look them up.
if I had for the rest of my
Mhm.
life, it would be Latin jazz.
I love that. Speaks to your soul.
Mhm.
Now, I was thinking if you were going to give a talk to a group of students, you can pick the age, sort of young to 17, 18-year-old students into school. What one lesson would you hope you could convey to them before they leave the auditorium? What would be the one thing that they should take?
In this current day and age, there's a lot of humanitarian talk in the sense of racism to cultures, and not necessarily in other parts of the world, but a lot in the United States. I find it the most. And the biggest lesson I always try to have in my life is know both sides of everything. Love all humans until you do need to really judge. And that's a big thing I have learned is about love and feeling cultures and understand the cultures before you just listen to what's on the news or even what's on YouTube. Learn it for yourself before you walk away with it. Um, and go experience it. I think that's probably one of my pinpoints. That's my hot topic, that when I'm in conversations with people who haven't traveled much out of their city, let alone their own country, and they're very opinionated on cultures, and I'm like, that wasn't the experience I had. I've lived there for
Right.
6 weeks, or I lived there for 6 months, and this was my experience, and I didn't even see anything like that happen in the country I was in. And why are you saying that when you've never even been there? And so that's a hot topic for me. So I really embrace cultural love, before you judge it. That's a big thing. Another life lesson I've walked away with is be like water. Just go with the flow. Be ready for the pivot wherever the stream's going to be. When you're an adventure travel outdoor producer, there are days where the weather is not your best friend, and as much planning
Right.
you went into and money you've spent to get that seaplane up in the air, it's not happening, and there's nothing you can do. And so you have to be like water and go with the flow and be upfront and honest with the people that you're with, so that way they can collaborate with you and go with the flow. If you try to control everything and you don't collaborate with the pivot, then I think life, both in personal life and in professional life, then the pivot's not going to happen. You got to work with and collaborate with your circle to be ready for the next thing that life may throw at you.
I absolutely love it. Yeah, what an important lesson for us all. Now, if people want to connect with you, if they'd like to follow you online, read more about you, where can people do that?
So I am the Real Traveler, and it's ReelTraveler. And so that kind of merges my two favorite worlds of travel and filmmaking with the Real. And I am just Real Traveler on all socials and my website. And I'm pretty good about keeping up where I am on my socials. I spend about 200 to 300 days a year still on the road, and just filming wherever life takes me.
I absolutely love it. Well, JJ, we're just going to wrap up this conversation now, I feel. Not only have I been inspired, I feel like I've made a friend. So thank you very, very much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me, and I'm so excited for where you're going to take this and inspire and change people's lives to being outdoors more.
Thank you very, very much indeed. Thanks again to this week's guest, and I hope today's episode sparked some curiosity or perhaps even inspired your next adventure. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and consider sharing it with somebody who's always ready to explore. You can find more information at the Outdoorsy Educator on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Until the next time, keep wondering and keep wandering.